Well, hello there, and welcome back to the Nancy K. Coy Show, Inside the Business. This is where we slow conversations down and we talk honestly about health, business, and the decisions that shape how we live and how we lead. Where clarity replaces confusion and conversations, well, these are conversations that are meant to move us forward. Today, I have the pleasure of Amy Bridger joining me from Cavarretta Consulting Group, and we're going to talk about DSO procurement and really how to standardize spend across locations without killing clinical autonomy. So excited to have you here. Welcome, Amy. Thank you for being with me today.
Thank you for having me, Nancy. I'm very excited to have this conversation with you. I think it's going to enlighten a lot of individuals.
Yeah, I was really, as I prepared for this, I think there's so many people that really do not have a clear understanding of really what procurement really is and the difference that it really makes. So let's go ahead and jump in. For people who hear the word procurement and kind of glaze over that, what is it in plain language, especially inside of a dental service organization?
Right. So oftentimes we hear procurement and we often think purchasing, just getting online and I'm purchasing. And although that's a component of procurement, that is certainly not procurement in its entirety. Procurement is really what we buy, who we buy it from, how we buy it, and how we track those things along the way. So it's a multi-step process that purchasing and pricing is a component of, but it actually has a full cycle that is attached to it as well.
Gotcha. So it's not just, like you said, it's not just buying products or services. It really goes a lot deeper than that.
Absolutely. I mean, it's about protecting our margin, but it's also about good procurement can help forecast consistency. And so we can use it as a tool within our practices to help forecast consistency and outcomes across all of our locations.
Which is really great because what costs in one place, what it costs in another, just demographics, right? I'm sure play a huge role in that.
Absolutely.
So at what point in growth does procurement go from really ordering supplies to a real margin and governance function?
Right. Even at a private practice level, there are certainly strategies that I would speak with a private practice owner to implement. But I would say immediately, even when you have 2 locations, you should really stop and slow down and think about your procurement strategy. Once you're at 10 locations, that strategy is a financial lever, right? Over $1 million of spend, it is actually affecting your P&L significantly. And it is a financial lever within your practice that should be controlled.
Yeah, I can imagine. And the more and more that you add more locations, that it quadruples, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, and the other thing that happens in there is when you're obviously, I mean, I guess that when you're buying more,
right?
People automatically think, well, if I'm buying more, I should probably pay less, right? I should get discounts and such.
Right.
I'm sure you know that,
right. Right. And if you're talking specifically to overstock, which I know we're going to kind of get in the specifics of this a little bit more soon, but overstock, is one of those times of it leads to leakage and it leads to expiration. So there's several things that there is a methodology around. How do we purchase? When do we purchase? Where do we purchase? To make it strategic.
Yeah, and I can see that. We'll get more into the strategy in just a bit because I could get ahead of my skis here because I have my brain. When preparing for this, there was a million things that
go down rabbit holes.
So where do DSOs really leak money and control? So where do you see most leakage really across locations? Just with, I guess, crazy or rogue ordering or duplication of orders or over ordering, maybe expired inventory, inconsistent pricing,
right?
Something else?
All those things that you said, 100%. And all of those things you mentioned happen typically because we have a lack of process, we have a lack of control. Yeah. So easily rogue ordering, duplication of SKUs, not working on formulary, which we will speak about shortly, overstock, leading to expiration, and inconsistency in price. Oftentimes we find the same DSO has one location ordering the same product paying price A and another paying price B. And so because of that, there's a lot of leakage that we experience within that side.
This is kind of bringing this home. This is so funny. My husband says to me all the time, before you go and order groceries on Amazon, could you go and check the refrigerator, Nancy? We have strawberries for 6 months. Right? And I do. I'm just such a creature of habit. And I think people just do that, right? They go, oh, I use this all the time, or and so you just whenever you're doing the order, you just
Absolutely.
sort of do it, right?
So, yeah, we're actually listing our home to sell next week. And so, prepping at home, you clean out all your cabinets and you reorganize your pantry. And when I was reorganizing my pantry, I found 8 boxes of rice. And that's kind of just like, oh, we are going to need rice, but it's that exact thing. It's not going to my inventory and seeing what's on my shelf and then overspending. And, good thing rice doesn't have a short expiration date, but you're right. I mean, it happens all the time. And we see that in practices. Funny enough, the same arguments we have, in our homes often with our spouses on your Amazon purchases and whatnot. You're having those in the DSO as well. Rogue Amazon purchases add up to be an enormous line item at the end of the year that we find just because it's a onesie twosie that we don't have control over.
And it makes such a difference. I think that a lot of people don't realize that businesses don't go to business, they run out of money, right? And it's the little items. It sounds silly, but it's the pennies. It's the 5 cents here and there that doesn't sound like a lot, but Amy, it adds up. It adds up. Yeah. So go ahead.
I was going to say, one of the things that we look at, data tells a story, as it does with any component of a business. And it certainly tells a story and reveals patterns within procurement within the DSO. And one of the things that I love to look at, just for like a quick, peek behind the curtain on how well a practice is doing on their purchasing, is I love to pull every product that they ordered one time within a calendar year. One time.
Oh,
not
wow.
two, not just one time.
Okay.
And easily, if you order it one time, we probably didn't need it. We probably were purchasing off formulary. It was probably a rogue spend. It was probably, I'll try that and see if I like that. Now, there are going to be times that we needed a specific burr for a specific procedure, and that's okay. But I would say that 90+%, maybe even 95%, of products that were purchased one time are inefficient products. And time again, I sit with DSOs at the size of 10 locations, even smaller, and we see that adds up to hundreds of thousands of dollars over a 12-month period. And so it's significant, and that's just small leakage. We haven't gotten into all the other nuances of spend at that point.
Yeah, that I can see that. I can see it. I'm going to try this and I'm going to see if I like it. And so often you try something, and as bad as it says, by the time that it arrives, you forgot about it.
You forgot it.
I mean, I know it
for sure.
So what are the top 5 silent spend problems that you see repeatedly?
It's a great question. There's many. So I would say the top 5 spend problems: inconsistent pricing. I know that sounds silly. We work with the vendors. We have a vendor relationship. We think that our pricing is the same. But when we do an audit, we often find it's not. And I'll tell you why. Many of the DSOs just in the industry are built by acquisition. They're consolidating and they're built by acquisition. Sure. And when you're in a fast-paced acquisition model, and you bring on 6 offices here or 5 offices here, to do the due diligence of going to every account and making sure your pricing aligns, that's a lot.
It is.
But what we see over time is that it's significant. And so inconsistent pricing is truly one of our top spend pricings. Inconsistent pricing is one of our top spend issues. Yes.
Sure.
Another one is off-contract spending. Okay. So one of the reasons that you work with a DSO, that you decide to partner with a dental service organization, is so that you can have those operational efficiencies, that they're bringing those to you, right? And we could get into the nitty-gritties of all the different ways that it helps within finances and HR, et cetera, et cetera. But one large component that it does provide is it does provide you economies of scale, and it provides you leverage. And
Sure.
with that, a DSO's one of the responsibilities is to take the business and broker it out to these manufacturers and create contracts on behalf of their DSO for their locations. And they do a wonderful job. Where we see the issue is not that they're not receiving a great contract, it's that that's not being implemented at the location level. And so we go and we contract with these manufacturers, we get a good deal, and then we lack the implementation at the location level to actually tap into those contracts.
That's right back to the rogue spend almost, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Other, just a few quick things, rebate tier, incentives, being like just kind of caught off guard by like a quick incentive or a quick rebate that causes issues, freight stacking, SKU creep. I mean, I could go on and on and on. But the good thing is we've identified these issues, and we can help you and your DSO walk through how we can tighten these components up.
Do me a favor. Would you explain for our listeners what SKU creep really is?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things, and again, we'll get into this a little bit more for strategy later on, is we want to have a locked down formulary. And it's going back to everything we're saying, right? We want to have a locked in formulary. We want to stay within that path. And that's not to restrain us. That's honestly to empower us in a lot of ways.
Sure.
But, SKU creep is when we're purchasing off the formulary. And then we have Me Too products, so we're purchasing off those. And then before we know it, we have a market basket of thousands of items, when in fact, a DSO can typically run, unless it's specialty, it can typically run on between 1,000 to 1,500 products.
Wow. Okay. Got it. So just so I make sure that I'm clear, it's kind of that rogue spending again.
Absolutely.
So SKU creep is, I just kind of inadvertently go and just start buying. And a lot of times I would think that would really affect the budget a lot of times.
Oh, absolutely it does.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I think that brings us to like our next like point that, you and I had chatted about previously, is like, what are the warning signs? Yeah. And that would be like one of my number one warning signs for DSO is obviously no formulary. That's a warning sign, ordering permissions. But if you don't have a supplied budget, then that's a big issue. Now, sure, there's many theories and methodologies around how we set our supply budget. But after working with dozens upon dozens of DSOs and speaking with many individuals, we truly believe the best way to set your budget is a percentage of previous month's production.
Got it.
So if you are not setting those budgets, if you're not having those conversations, that's your number one red flag and an early warning sign that you probably are experiencing SKU creep and out of compliance within your formulary.
And so that really kind of ties into really the common internal behaviors that really break standardization.
Absolutely.
Got it.
Yeah.
So what does a mature DSO procurement operating model look like, and who owns what centrally, like versus locally?
Right. Great question. So a mature DSO procurement group, there are, there is things that are delegated down to the local level. We'll kind of get into, I think, later on in our conversation about, what autonomy really truly is, but with the clinicians, because I think that's a very important component of this conversation, is that we're not impacting clinical decisions.
Yeah.
But from a centralized perspective, the DSO should be the one negotiating contracts. They should be the one that are working with the vendors. They should be setting the budgets, formulary pricing, and governance over everything. Also, some DSOs also have approval levels at the DSO level.
Sure.
So, and there's different methodologies on when you would want a DSO approval versus not. But also centralized at the DSO level would be reporting. So those monthly budgets, staying on top of contracts, et cetera, et cetera. However, that does not exclude regional or local level involvement by anything. That's the individuals using the product. And
Sure.
so we encourage open communication about product and usage and how it's working. A local practice is also, or a region is also, they're the ones responsible for keeping their budget and understanding how to forecast that budget, understanding if I have $10,000 this month, how am I going to get that through to the end of the year? And most importantly, they are in charge of their own inventory control. So knowing what's on the shelf, knowing their depletion, and reporting their depletion rates and their turnover rates of that inventory back to the DSO.
So how do you really set ordering permissions, though, and approval thresholds without slowing the clinic down?
Right, right. It's a change of thought, right? And oftentimes we think, oh, well, I can't do that because of this. But when we spoke about our lane, we often, time as I said, we also think that binds us where really it releases us. But if the DSO level properly provides a formulary, they properly provide a list of products, they load that into either a procurement platform, which we highly suggest, and or their vendor platforms, and they make all of those decisions for them. And then the local level is educated on why this product and why this budget or why this system. In reality, it's going to save them a lot of time. So they should go in and it should be click, click, click. I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm allowed to do. I know that I'm all on the same page. And it's about backing back the timeline where typically I ordered on Tuesday by 3 to get my product by Wednesday. And now because I need approval, maybe I have to order Monday by 3. But if you have those conversations and back into that timeline, we often find that it takes less time to order, there's less issues, and everybody across the entire organization is much happier.
Got it. Yeah, that makes absolute total sense. And it probably, again, by doing that, it probably mitigates a lot of those things that we talked about earlier, which is that rogue spend and the creep and all that. So what metrics should leadership review monthly, and what is a true, like, a red flag?
Right. So we already spoke about one.
Yeah.
You should have your budget percentage. So your supply percentage against production. Now, I will tell you, there are some great, you can research them. There's great resources out there that tell you national averages and tell you, where you should be. And that's a conversation that I love to dig in with my clients and actually explore where we should be setting the budget and how. One component of that is really understanding what is into that percentage. I have my percentage of spend. Is that including implants? Is that including ortho? Is that including lab? So you have to define that. But that's one metric that has to be clear from day one, is what is your supply percentage against production? Another is compliance. So we can do all this work. We see this often. We spoke about it previously. The DSO does a tremendous job negotiating their contracts. They do a tremendous job getting samples and making a decision and signing the dotted line that we're going to use these products. But at the end of the day, there's a lack of implementation for a myriad of reasons. And so they have a very low compliance percentage. So you can do all these wonderful things and make these wonderful decisions, but if you're not tracking your compliance percentage, oftentimes it's a moot point. Off-contract spending, that kind of goes with compliance, would be another one. We spoke about it previously too, our inventory turns. So at the local level, that is the responsibility of the local level to understand the inventory they have on their shelf and understanding how often I'm turning that inventory. And so what's an inventory turn? That is, how long does it take me to order this box of products and to go through it and have to order it again? Is it taking me 6 weeks? Okay, then my minimums are too high, and maybe I can order less and I can squeeze that budget a little bit more. If I'm running out and I'm turning my inventory 4 times a month, so every week I'm running out, then maybe I need to adjust. But it's very difficult to adjust your minimums and maximums of inventory when you don't know your inventory turnover.
Yeah, I can see that. So I have a question, because you're preaching to the choir about some of this stuff, because I've lived it. But doctors, dentists have a tendency to I learned years ago in surgery, if a doctor likes some type of suture, that's the one they like to use, right? Do you ever see that as providers are joining a DSO, that there's some push-pull there, because I like this and you want me to do that? Do you see that?
Every day. Every day.
Yeah.
And that's an important conversation. And I want to preface this with, that's also okay. These are the clinicians. These are the ones that understand what they're wanting their outcomes to be. But oftentimes when we speak to these clinicians, what they're really looking for is they're looking for familiar products. They don't want to be in the middle of a treatment plan and they get a new product they've never seen before. So they're looking for something they're familiar with. They're looking for confidence in the outcome. So it might be a really good composite. I don't know. But I don't know what that outcome is going to be because I'm not familiar with it.
Sure.
And so because of that, we turn into this mentality of, okay, well, then the clinicians, they need to have full autonomy because we want to make them happy. And that's not what it is. Clinical autonomy is autonomy in treatment planning. Yeah. It's autonomy in care decisions. And it's not autonomy in an open catalog. Okay. Now, let me say this too. We work with the clinicians on what are the outcomes you're looking for so we can find the best products. And then we narrow it down, but involve your clinicians. And also, I think it's okay if you have one doctor that has to have that one suture and their production is really high, give them the suture. It's okay. But it's about, what are our clinical outcomes? Can we all be standardized? Can we all come to a agreement around this so that all of our providers are familiar? We can forecast our clinical outcomes. It also makes training of new providers much easier when we're all utilizing the same product. And have you heard, I haven't said price once. It's not about the price.
A lot of this isn't about
that comes after. Once we clinically look at it, that's where the leverage comes in, and we get to go to the manufacturers and we get to test their products and play with it. And then we contract the price, and then again, implement. We got to see it through implementation, not just make these clinical decisions, make these business work decisions, but implement those decisions. Across the organization.
You know, it makes all the sense in the world. So for providers that are listening,
yes,
so many of them, I would think, just my hypothesis, that they think so much of this is all about price. Right. And we're, kind of saying, no, you got to do this, you got to do that. So what is really the right expectations of the process, that doctors can bring their thoughts so they feel but really feel heard, right? But the DSO still maintains control.
So I always base products in critical and non-critical. A cup is a cup is a cup. You know, if we have a preference over that, then we might have some issues. And so they have to be able to let go of some of those non-critical items, you know, what we're covering our tray with, or maybe, I don't know, certain PPE, not gloves. We would never touch your gloves, clinicians. I know y'all are very particular.
Yeah, they're particular about their gloves.
But we have our critical list and then our non-critical list. On the critical list, it's about having those conversations early.
Sure.
It's about having an open door, having an open dialogue on, you're the clinician, what's important to you in a product? Is it what's important to you in your instrument? What's important to you in your composite? What's important to you in your varnish? And having that open dialogue and having room for them to have their input.
To say what they want. So those are like, you're having a dialogue with them. That's kind of like, this is my non-negotiables. Like, this is what I have to have as a clinician to be successful, versus what is just preference. And if you can go to my manufacturer and you can negotiate a better price, Amy, that would be fantastic. I have no problem with that. But I really want this because this is why I feel like I have a better clinical outcome. So,
and it's funny, every client that I work with, I could tell you right now what their non-negotiable product is from day one. It's like, Amy, no matter what we're doing, we're not changing X product. We're not doing that. Okay, I hear you. You're right. We're going to keep that on. But I will tell you, my most lean practices, lean DSOs that are hitting that 4% mark or less, 3.5% mark of spend against production, they're not using cheap product. They're using your high-end product, the best that's on the market. They just have systems and control in place. I can go to Neiman Marcus and stay within budget and have a wonderful experience, or I can go to Walmart and blow my budget before I even get past the entry. It's about the processes and where, again, procurement. What are we buying? How are we buying it? Where are we buying it? And when are we buying it? And that's what's going to keep you in compliance.
Yeah. It's so funny because so often we think, oh, it's going to be less expensive if I go this route, but it really, really isn't, based on the quality of the product. And I love what you're saying, that, listen, this isn't about buying the cheapest thing. And I think probably providers a lot of times think that would be procurement, but what you're saying is that's literally 180 degrees different. Right. So what change management mistakes can standardize those wars inside, I guess, the DSOs?
So change management, again, it comes down to communication. I would say a lot of what I do comes down to change management. We make decisions. We have a good idea. How do we implement? How are we communicating this? Do our assistants, who are the ones that are counting the cotton rolls and the ones that are placing the orders, understand why? And if they understand and they're a part of the group, there's much less disruption. And then just making like quick decisions they're not thoughtful decisions. So again, getting tricked into quick rebates, getting tricked into, oh, well, my local rep came in and said, if I bought today that I could get, this special thing. And so then not only are we not in compliance, but also now we don't have the data where it should be. Things of that.
So you have a new provider that's coming on, a new DSO to a DSO. And now we have to earn trust, right? And before really enforcing this formulary. And that's hard if you're a provider, or even if you're an office manager, or you've had control and now you have this new entity telling you what you have to do, and you've never had that before. I think you talked about communication, but what do the best DSOs do to really earn that trust with, again, not just the provider, but the team?
It's team, right? I would say that they make it part of their culture. And one of the things that they do early on is it's not a surprise. They're having these conversations early on in these relationships, early on in the negotiation on, are we going to acquire practice? And so this is a part of our culture and our why, and this is why we do things. What scares you about this? We see that this is different from what you've done. So what makes you nervous about this? And is this something that, we could share, our processes with, and maybe you could understand it better? What's bad is when all is said and done, they've had their ways, and all of a sudden we come in and say, my way's the highway. I don't care what you've done before. This is the way it's going to be. And although we know that new way may be right, it's not thoughtful because we haven't communicated it. And so making these part of the culture, that's what good DSOs during their acquisition models, they're having these conversations early and letting them know early, this is how we do things, and we want you to be a part of those decisions.
And this is going to make things easier on you. And I love what you said about, we have these conversations early, so it doesn't feel like, it's not a bait and, or kind of feel like a bait and switch, I guess, when that conversion happens, because this is one of the biggest things that I think is such a benefit to these providers. I mean, what you're doing is so critical to the bottom line. So let's talk a little bit about vendor strategy, contracts, rebates, and really in benchmarking, because this is one of the big things that I think that you do that, quite frankly, I think is really probably a fun part of your job.
It is fun.
You get to see all the cool new stuff. But what is the biggest mistakes DSOs make when choosing like a distributor strategy?
Right. Well, let me say this. I've been in the industry for 13 years, almost 14 years. And it was just well known when I came into the industry that dentistry is archaic. Dentistry is 20 years behind medical. Yeah. And I do still believe that to be true in a lot of ways. But I will say in the past few years, things have changed tremendously. And there's been a lot of forethought into the technology that's been brought to the space and the ingenuity that's been brought to the space. And why I bring that up is we have this thought that the way things have been is the way things they always ought to be, right?
Yeah.
When you go back and it's always, well, what office are you? Are you working with distributor A or are you working with distributor B? I have to brand myself that I'm loyal to this and I'm loyal to that. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying not to do that, because there is value in having a partner, and we recommend having a partner. And we go through many, many different points that we look at into naming who our prime vendor, our prime partner is. But to say that it has to be an either or, black and white, those days are gone. Those things have changed. And so I do think it's important to have a prime vendor, one that you are committed to, one that you is your go-to, one that you do your service through, a full service dealer. But I also think and know and see daily that it's completely appropriate and it's common for DSOs to also have regionals or smaller mail order companies that they're working with too. It doesn't have to just be all or nothing. It can be a blend. And that's something that's definitely changed in the last few years.
Which is good. I mean, it's good that we're raising the bar and getting, this is still an industry, thank goodness we're getting away from it, but that faxes, I mean, it's like, if you ask 20 Gen Zs or what, whatever what's a fax, right?
Yeah. And unfortunately there are still those
Oh, I see.
practices that write on Post-it notes. And, I used to be the rep that went practice to practice, and some was a dry erase, some was a Post-it. And I just took orders all day. But things have changed. Things have really moved forward. And I would say that, using a single distributor, you need to leverage, and you also need simplicity. So I think there's a beauty and simplicity of using one main vendor. However,
so you think that that's good? Because my question was going to be to you. I mean, obviously these distributors that have been around for a really long time, they're probably not going anywhere. But in some cases, having one supplier for a particular item, can't that be like a single point of failure? Because
right. Yeah. And that's what we don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, which I think historically has been done.
Right.
And so although it does create leverage and simplicity, which we want, we also don't want to forget risk mitigation, right? Which is a huge component of like what you just said. So mitigating our risk, you need to know where are the distribution centers for these suppliers. If I have a big blizzard up in the Northeast, like how is that going to impact me in the South? And so you don't need to be calling the phone the day of. You need to already have those relationships in place for risk mitigation. And we all know like, oh, that will never happen. Well, it has. COVID happened, right? It all happened. And we were all scrambling around. So
I mean, we've had this incredibly crazy weather, and that makes a huge difference. I mean, right. No, I get it. That I totally understand that. And you can't run a business effectively when your hands are tied. Because at that point, we kind of go back to that, sort of that spend creep, right? Because now I can't get my products, and now I have to go out of the box, and now I'm out of my budget because I this is just managing the business is really what we're talking about. I mean, it's really solid management. And thinking ahead. I've often said, Amy, that build your network before you need it.
Right. I could not agree more.
Yeah.
And with the technology today, I mentioned technology's really changed. There are so many good, solid procurement platforms out there that monitor stock levels of your different distributors.
Yeah.
And you can see, we spoke about those contracts. Hold those contracts at multiple places. It doesn't have to just be held at one dealer. Again, I'm not saying not to have those relationships, the importance of, and we do drive those conversations, those are very important. But you have the technology in place that you didn't have previously to be exposed to more information, and you can mitigate the risk that you previously weren't able to do so just a few years ago.
Yeah. Makes all the sense in the world. Absolutely. So what contract terms really matter beyond price, like service levels, like returns, freight, I guess back orders, substitutions, compliance, like maybe even payment terms?
All the things you just mentioned are great terms, or great things to look at. We look at many things. Again, very rarely have you and I even said the word price. That's a component.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes it's even come up.
Right.
Sure,
payment terms, fulfillment is really, really important. We need to have predictable fulfillment times. So it is very hard. You might be able to get online. In fact, I know you can get online, and you might be able to find an authorized dealer. I'm not talking gray market here. I'm talking an authorized dealer that you could get a product for a considerable amount less. Yeah. But you might have a fulfillment time of 2 weeks. That doesn't work in the DSO industry.
Yeah.
You need to know where your DCs are. You need to know your fulfillment time. If you have rural locations, what is their fulfillment? Ask your distributor, are there any practices that you can't service? Are there any of my practices that you can't deliver to in 24 hours? Let me know those exceptions now. And then obviously we get into payment terms. People can be creative. I would also encourage net down pricing, avoid rebates, and talk more about net down pricing. Rebates often hide inefficiency, and we don't know to the end of the year, and then we have a later payout, and we can't forecast that. And so I would say that's another very important component to look at in your contract with a dealer is rebates and fulfillment percentages.
Yeah, you answered my next question, because I was going to ask you about rebates, because I would think that is kind of one of those sometimes gotcha kind of things that and how many times do rebates, I don't know, maybe they do get return, money gets returned, but it always seems like it comes with some cost that you didn't expect.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Yeah.
It's pennies on the dollar, and we can get into the conversation of time value of money here and all of those wonderful things, and who's holding the dollar and whose is it, when is it. But I don't even think you have to get that detailed to understand that I want to know what my landing cost is on this product. What is my true cost? Not what will it be if I order enough. And oftentimes we find at the end of the year, when rebates are in place, people will overspend in order to hit their tier. And then where did all that efficiency go? So talk about net down pricing. And then gone are the days too. I used to, early on in my DSO days, it would be very common for me to see rebates at like 5-6%. That's no longer the case. Those just don't exist in our industry any longer. And so when you do see rebates, they're 1 or 2%. And you have to ask yourself, what is that really worth? And would I prefer the transparency, or prefer the maybe, I don't know, $15,000, $20,000 check? Maybe next March when they get all my numbers in order.
Exactly.
Right.
And when you paid it in, net 15 terms, or, there's so many different things that are in the, and I would think too that, because I've seen this happen so much on the aesthetic side, where just exactly what you say, if you buy maybe this neurotoxin or whatever, and then they expire, right? And
it happens all the time.
It
happens all the time. And just remember, sometimes we have to get back to the basics. What is a dealer for? A dealer their job is to hold the inventory and to pick, pack, and ship it when you need it.
Sure.
You are not in the business of needing to hold inventory.
Yeah.
That is not what you're doing. You are not a product on a shelf is $1 out of your pocket.
That's exactly right. 100%.
So, and to add one more thing, and I think this kind of goes without saying, but in your conversations, in your contracts, know that you have a just-in-time inventory system, JIT. What are they working on? Are the products that I have decided on my formulary, are these products that you, dealer, are housing on your shelves constantly? And are you going to be able to quickly meet my forecasted needs? Or am I going to expect that at the end of the quarter, I might have some back orders? Those are things you need to know, and things that you need in writing, that you have a JIT system for the products that are on your formulary.
So tell me what a JIT system is.
So JIT stands for just-in-time inventory, and that is ordering the product when you need the product and not having to hold it prior to that.
So what you're really talking about is alignment.
Yeah.
So when you're working with your suppliers, it's really a matter of figuring out alignment, because everything you're saying is it nails down how these spend can just get so out of control. And you're right, we haven't even really talked hardly at all about price. So how do you handle manufacturer conversation or conversions, I guess, and product changes without disrupting clinics? And then I have so answer that, because I have a question in my brain that I can't get out. So.
Yeah. So when it comes to more of those clinical products, every DSO should have a clinical committee, oftentimes as part of the founders.
Okay.
If it is a clinical product, I would never, ever suggest, recommend, or actually do change a clinical product without clinical committee.
Insight.
So you have that. Then I would identify offices that are forward thinking, maybe a little bit more nimble, that those are your offices that you turn on first for new product, trial offices. You just need one or two, work out any kinks. In your monthly conversations with your teams, let them know, hey, we've signed this new deal. Next month, this product's going to change. Again, communicate early. Yeah, and then a slow rollout. There's nothing wrong with saying, I'm going to take this, especially if it's a really large clinical change. If we're changing a process, if it's just a varnish to a varnish, then just let them know. But if it's a process, communicate early and then roll it out slowly. So region A, region B, go one by one, and it's okay to take a little bit of time doing so.
So it ties perfectly into my question. We didn't preface this or talk about this before, but it's been driving me crazy. So you're a new company. You're maybe a startup company, and there's so many companies that are emerging in our space, right? They're coming in, they're trying to get their products and services into these practices. We all know that it's not easy to launch a product or a brand, and you're trying to make headway. How do you deal with those new suppliers that they are brand new, but maybe, how do you deal with that? Because obviously you want to make sure that the product, I would think, right, is all the things we've talked about. Are you going to be able to get the product to me on time? Or, is it going to be within budget? I mean, all these things. So speak to that.
How do you break through as a new office? First of all, recognize that these procurement teams are being inundated with dozens of vendors calling them a day, and they all just want a little time. That's all they want. And that time just doesn't exist, unfortunately. One of the pitfalls I often see, new, wonderful technology, wonderful products come into the space and they want a seat at a DSO, is they focus a lot on features and benefits, and they forget to represent the ROI back to the DSO. And there are dozens, if not hundreds, of phenomenal products out there. But if it's not going to impact production and it's not going to be an ROI, that's the thing that they need to have their ear turned first. And then once they understand that component, the financial component, then you can get into the weeds of the F&Bs and all the things your product does. But don't just go in there and sell them a bunch of goods and how this product's going to change without having a true business case on how this is going to strategically impact their bottom line at a practice level.
Yeah. So what you're talking about is product market fit.
Yep.
Right. And I get it, because I've been on both sides of that table, and it is hard. And I've been brand new. I've been a startup founder a handful of times, and then I've been on the other side where I've been the one that's buying. Right. And so I think again, a lot of this stuff comes back to alignment. So as we kind of wind down here, and I've so appreciated this conversation.
Of course.
Let's talk about some practical roadmaps and maybe some quick wins. So if you're a DSO, let's say you have 10 to 50 locations and you want results and you want them fast. What are the first 3 actions to do in the next 30 days?
Yeah. Tomorrow I would sit down and I would know my percentage of spend against production for every one of my practices. Start tracking that now. And I think that that's going to tell you a lot of the story of where you need to steer the ship to start cleaning up. So set your budgets and know your percentage of spend against production. Secondly, we want to go in order of, how do we eat the elephant one bite at a time? Yep. I would say that one of the main things you have to do is you have to solidify those vendor relationships. I'm not talking about solidifying the price of gloves for this particular box. I'm talking about solidifying who is going to be my fulfillment dealer and what are all of those things in there. Once I have that, Then I can go to the next block, which is looking at categories. Where can I consolidate within a category, consolidate within restorative, consolidate within infection control to contracts? Then I get down to my top 200 items, and you go down the funnel. But we make mistakes when we get granular too quick and we start saying, oh, well, I can go save X amount if I just switch this one product. No. Start at the top, know your percentage of spend against production, solidify those vendor relationships so you have a partner. And I don't say that to be cliche. A true dealer really will be a partner and will help you.
Yep.
Then you will funnel down. And before you know it, you're going to be talking about those products on the low end, but you're already going to have the up funnel taken care of.
Great. And so what does the next 90-day plan look like? So you've done the quick wins. So when those are done, what's sort of next for the, like I said, the next 90 days?
Yeah. So quick wins and all those things I mentioned, probably not going to happen in the first 30 days. I would say that's kind of a 90-day plan. So quickly 30, set a budget, start tracking your budget and know what your spend is. Okay. And then for the next 90, you'll be working on that. If you have not, as a DSO, if you have a prime vendor agreement, a master service agreement, whatever you may call it, and you have not gone out to an RFP or bid, I highly recommend you doing so. And it's not to play like checkmate or anything.
Yeah.
It is doing your due diligence as a business owner. The dental industry is one of the very few industries that does not, in this level, with this amount of product running through it, that do not run through formal RFPs, which is just mind-boggling to me. Yeah. And so if you're a large DSO and you've not gone to bid or you've not done a formal RFP, I would say you need to do that in the next 90 days. And that's where the fun happens. And that's where Cavarretta Consulting Group comes in and we get to walk you through what that process looks like.
Yeah, we're going to get into that. So because that was one thing I was going to say is what's one thing that leaders should really stop doing immediately that is costing them a bunch of margin?
What is one thing to stop doing immediately?
Yeah.
Is that your question?
Yeah.
I would put in, because it's going to take some time to set a formulary. So I don't want to just say, oh, make a formulary, because it's not that simple. There's a means to the madness there. But I would say set controls where you have to have approvals. And if it's out of budget, it's not approved.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and now later on, we can get to the nitty gritty and it's going to be very formalized and you work on a formulary, but immediately know your spend, set your budget, and no more spending after we've reached that budget. We have to have a conversation.
And I love your focus, because you've said that like 3 or 4 times. Know your spend, know your budget. And that's the thing that happens. So many business owners, that you can't run a business successfully if you don't know your numbers, right? I mean, okay, so this is the one thing that all of us executives, what's the one boring discipline that creates the biggest long-term savings? It's like, oh, I don't want to do this.
I know. Another meeting, right?
Right. I mean, I'm kind of thinking, well, let Amy do it. Thank
you. That is a wonderful answer.
Yeah.
Not to add another meeting, but it really, truly is stopping at least monthly and having a compliance review with your team. If you have your numbers in place, it won't take long. 15 minutes is enough. Are we on budget? Are we over? What's hindering us? What is our compliance rate of formulary? What's our inventory turn rate? Talk about those things. Have that conversation on a monthly basis. Do not punt it to next month. Have it.
And I think what you just said is pivotal, that even though these are meetings that sometimes, oh gosh, something else is more important. No, it really, really isn't. Some of these meetings need to be written in pen, and they just don't get moved unless it's life or death kind of thing, because that's what I have found is in my own career over the 36 years being in this industry, is that it's the business meetings that I didn't really want to be in a lot of times that were some of the major, which were pivotal, and I just had to force myself. So if you could leave listeners today with one simple scorecard to assess their procurement maturity, what would be on it?
One simple thing on their scorecard. Let me think. So I would say that you need to know your vendor strategy. We spoke a lot about, do I use multiple vendors? Do I use one vendor? Whatever it is, have a vendor strategy and know it and stick with it. Your compliance percentage, we spoke about that. And then all other things we've spoken about, your approval structures. But again, at the end of the day, if you don't know your numbers, you're working in the dark. So know your numbers, know your landing cost, and know your percentage of spend against your production.
So I have one last question for you.
Yes.
What is the most overlooked policy that prevents leakage?
I'm just going to order it this once.
I had a feeling that's what you were going to say, right? Because it just takes people off the,
just going to do it
off their axis, right? And you're trying to set parameters. Amy, this has been so insightful. I mean, you definitely are such an expert at what you do. You know your business so well. So for our listeners today, thanks for being here, for listening so thoughtfully. Amy, how can our listeners get in touch with you?
Absolutely. I will provide my information to Nancy, but email me anytime. My email is amy@CavarrettaConsultingGroup.com. I know that's a mouthful, but Nancy will have my information, and feel free to reach out, and we can always discuss your procurement strategy and what are those first steps you need to take in order to get a handle of it.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have your information in the description so people can reach out to you. So remember, these conversations are meant to create space for understanding and clarity for you DSOs. I hope this is so helpful for you, for those emerging DSOs, that you've learned some really, really powerful information. So you're setting yourself up for success. Goodness, that was I didn't mean to say that. Anyway, I'll see you next time inside the business with Nancy K. Coy. Great to have you here today. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Very well.
Is it still recording? I think it's still recording.
Right.